Alarm doors are a staple in GTFO levels. You'll very rarely come across an expedition that has no alarm doors whatsoever anywhere throughout it. And when you do come across a level like this, it usually means one of two different things. Either the level has something much more terrifying in it that'll make you wish you were dealing with Class 5 and Class 6 alarms, or the level is R3A2, which is a pretty simple, straightforward, and not all that difficult of a level to complete. Yeah, this is probably going to be one of my shorter level guides. Hello everyone, Professor Scalar here, and welcome to the alternate R3A2 level guide. Just like always, we're starting off with your loadout, and this time around I recommend you bring with you a bio-tracker, a mine deployer, and then 2 sentries that have a higher rate of fire, so either burst sentries or shotgun sentries, depending on just what you feel like taking in with you. The reason I recommend the bio-tracker is because in this level there is a fair amount of infectious fog, and this is going to conceal the location of enemies from time to time, so having a bio-tracker that way you have all that information is definitely quite helpful. When it comes to the mine deployer, I'm recommending this since there are no alarm doors in this level, but there are 3 different blood doors you have to make your way through, and mines make blood doors an absolute cakewalk to deal with. That, and if we walk into a room that has a fair amount of enemies and we accidentally wake them up, we can always fall back, shut a door, mine it, and that mine will deal with a pretty decent amount of them for us, so we don't have to spend nearly as much ammunition and risk losing so much HP. And then when it comes to the 2 sentries, these are just to give us a little bit of extra firepower. Again, you wake up a room with a lot of enemies, or maybe you wake up a scout, you could get to a good position to hold out at and just plop down 1 if not both of your sentries, and they will help you out quite a bit. That, and when you make your way back to the beginning of the level for that extraction scan, you do have an extraction alarm you have to deal with, and there will be a fair amount of infectious fog, which will make it harder to see the enemies. So if we have 2 sentries that don't care whatsoever about the fog and just start shooting left and right whenever they see enemies come within their line of fire, well, it'll make extraction quite a bit easier, and we don't have to worry about dying right at the end of the level. Dropping down into level, you'll see that your main objective is to find 4 power cells and bring them all back to the generator cluster inside zone 125. And your 4 power cells will be located in every single zone throughout the level except for 125 itself. So you and your team are going to be starting off in zone 124. In here there's going to be a power cell for you to collect, a fair amount of infectious fog, so be careful of the pit in the middle of the room, and there will be no type of enemies except for giant strikers, and usually there's about 5 or 6 of them, I believe. So what I recommend you do is as soon as you drop into level, one person hop on the terminal and use it to ping the power cell that's in the zone with you. That way you can see if it's up above out of the infectious fog, in which case you can safely grab it now, or if it's down below in the infectious fog, in which case you could just save it for later, as every time you plug a power cell into the generator cluster, it will cause the fog to lower by a considerable amount. And the same can also apply to the giant strikers. There are a fair amount of them in this zone, but I would highly recommend you either deal with every single one of them now, either by meleeing some of them and then shooting the rest and letting them come to you, or wait until later once you lower the fog a bit, then come back out here and deal with every single one of them. And just make sure you kill all of these giants before you plug in all 4 of the power cells, because once you do, an extraction alarm is going to initiate, and you don't want to have to deal with all of these giants and the extraction alarm enemies all at the same time. So make your way through the zone however you see best fit with you and your team and just what your situation looks like. And once you're done in here, you can head to the northern end to the security door to zone 125. That door is just going to be a full team scan, so group up, do the scan, and you can head right on in. Inside zone 125, there is going to be the generator cluster in the middle of the room, and throughout the rest of the room, you can expect to see some regular strikers and shooters, as well as some resources, and a total of 3 different security doors. One to the west, which leads you zone 128, one to the north to zone 126, and one to the east to zone 127. And each one of these 3 zones will have a power cell in it. And you could technically do them in any order, but some of the zones will have a fair amount or at least a little bit of infectious fog in them until you plug in some of the power cells. So I recommend that once you're done in zone 125 itself, go to the north and head into zone 126. That security door, just like the other 2, is going to be a blood door, so place a mine or 2 on it and then 1 or both of your sentries facing towards it. Open up the door, fall back a bit, let the mines deal with most of the enemies, and then you and the sentries can pick off the few that did survive. Then once everything is dead, pack up the sentries and head to that zone 126. In there are going to be some enemies, strikers, shooters, giant strikers, as well as a single scout patrolling about, so be careful of all of them. And there'll be resources for you to collect, as well as a single power cell. And if you're having a hard time finding any of this, there are terminals in that zone that you can use to ping their exact locations. But once you grabbed everything you need from zone 126, head back out to zone 125, plug the power cell into the generator cluster to lower the fog a bit, and then you can head over to the east to the security door to zone 127. And at this point, you're basically just rinse and repeating what you did with 126. This security door is going to be a blood door, so set for it, deal with all those enemies, and once they're dead, head into the zone and just explore throughout it. Again, you'll have strikers, shooters, giant strikers, and a single scout patrolling about throughout here. There will be resources for you to collect, there will be the power cell, and there will be terminals that you can use to ping the location of anything in case you're having a difficult time finding anything that you are looking for. But once you have everything you need from inside zone 127, head back out to 125, plug your power cell into a generator cluster, and at this point you've either plugged in 2 of them or all 3 of them, or I should say 3 out of 4 of them. If you haven't gotten the one from the first zone in 124, or you haven't dealt with all those giants yet, I recommend that at this point, go out there, look for that power cell, and deal with every single one of those giant strikers. Then head back into the cluster room, plug in that power cell, and at that point, you should have 3 out of 4 of the cells into the generator cluster, which will make it so that we can now finally go to the west and down that ladder to the security door to zone 128 without gaining a ton of infection. So climb down there, place 1, 2, or if you want to, and you want to do the whole Professor Scalar method, place literally every single mine you have on that blood door, and then as soon as you open up the door, very, very quickly climb up that ladder. That way when the mines go off, you are not part of the firework display. It might be fun to go out with a bang, but, might not be the best idea right here. Or at least might not be the best idea for everybody on your team to do it. Jokes aside, deal with the blood door. Once all the enemies are dead, just go back down that ladder, and then just head throughout zone 125. It's basically the exact same thing as 126 and 127. You're going to have strikers, shooters, potentially some giant strikers. There isn't a scout you have to deal with in this zone, thankfully, but there will be more of the other type of enemies, so still be a bit cautious. And the other big thing to take note of is even though you've lowered the fog by a pretty considerable amount, it is still going to be a slight issue in this zone. In most of the rooms, it's going to be knee or waist height, so you're not really going to be able to crouch walk through this zone safely without gaining a ton of infection, which might make it a little bit more difficult to deal with some of the enemies. That, and you have to be careful of the enemies that are crouched low to the ground, as they will be concealed by this infectious fog, but as long as you're working around the person with the biotracker, this shouldn't be that much of an issue for you. You should have plenty of resources, so if you need to pull some of the rooms and fall back in mine doors or place down your sentries, by all means, you should be able to and not have that big of a deal with it. But make your way throughout the zone, collect resources, and once you find that 4th and final power cell, head out of the zone, go back into 125, and then don't plug the power cell in until all 4 of you have grouped up there together as a team. Because once you plug the 4th power cell in, a temporary blackout is going to occur, and once that blackout concludes and the lights come back on, an extraction alarm is going to initiate, and a full team scan is going to appear right next to you and that generator cluster. So deal with the full team scan really quickly before any of the enemies show up, and then once it's done, just hightail it all the way back down to the south, as your extraction scan will be in the area where you initially dropped down to the level from. Thing to take note of though is that the infectious fog levels have risen once again, so don't go through the middle of the first room in that pit, otherwise you're going to gain a ton of infection. Go around the edge and then just make your way back to extraction, and once you get to the scan, plop down both of your sentries facing towards the direction enemies will come from, and just get ready to hold out for a bit. This extraction scan will take a little bit of time to complete. It's not a super quick one, so you will have to hold out against a few waves of enemies, but as long as the biotracker person is tagging them, that way you can more easily see them even through the infectious fog, and you have both of your sentries placed down, you really shouldn't have all that much difficulty surviving here. So just hold out for a bit, and once the scan hits 100%, you are done, and you have completed alternate R3A2. And that's all there is to it. Alternate R3A2 is, in my opinion, one of the easiest levels in all of GTFO history. Sure, there's a fair amount of enemies in some of those zones, and there is Infectious Fog, which I know a lot of people struggle with, but not having a single alarm makes things so much simpler. Years ago, when I first started making guides for GTFO, I used R3A2 to make my solo guide, since I knew that it would be the easiest level for me to do solo back then. Which is saying something, because back then I was very bad at the game and nowhere near as skilled as I am today. So yeah, thank goodness this level existed, otherwise that solo guide might not have actually been made in the first place. As always though, thank you for watching this video all the way to the very end. I do hope that it was able to provide you with some assistance in beating this level. If you have any tips or tricks this level that you want to share, any questions for me, or you just have something in general that you want to say, please do let me know down in the comments. Hit that like button if you enjoyed the video, subscribe to the channel if you want to see more from me, and if you want to join my lovely community, there's a link to my Discord down in the description, as well as some other links you might be interested in. Among those links being one that will take you to the official GTFO merch store, which as always, I highly recommend you check out if you're a fellow GTFO enthusiast. Until next time, get ready to put those tower defense skills to use as we're about to drop into R3's reactor level, and hopefully, I'll see you all in the next video.